Life isn't black and white, and neither is our mental health and well-being. It's more like a roller coaster with ups and downs and everything in between. So instead of labeling yourself as okay or not okay, I think it's time to think about mental health and well-being as a spectrum with some shades of grey and also colour. And having worked in UK universities for the last 10 plus years, I have seen firsthand the struggles that many students have, but also lecturers, myself included. So I want to help us improve our health and well-being. So in this video, I'm going to talk through a model which I think is a really helpful way for you to frame and figure out where you're at. So what is mental health? Well, different people talk about it in different ways, and for me that's been one of the things that has made it quite confusing to be figuring out. For example, some people prefer the term well-being rather than mental health, because not everyone who experiences a decline in their well-being would associate that with a health concern. And others would say, just as we have physical health, so we also have mental health. Either way, our mental health and well-being influences how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make decisions. In short, it's just as important as our physical health. One of the most helpful ways I found for thinking about mental health and well-being is as a continuum, and we can think about it as having two dimensions. On this continuum, we have mental health difficulties. So we might have people who have never identified as having experienced a mental health difficulty, but then as we move to the other end, we might find people who do feel they have a personal experience of a mental health difficulty, and maybe they have a specific diagnosis, so depression, panic, or anxiety disorders, for example. The second dimension to this continuum is our mental well-being, and well-being refers to how we're generally feeling about life, so our ability to cope with those normal daily stresses, to be productive and to contribute to relationships, be those with housemates, sports team members, or in an academic group project. So you might have someone in the top left corner who does have a lived experience of a mental health difficulty, and maybe they've had depression for a number of years, but actually they're at university and they are part of a great sports team, they are smashing their course, they've got a good group of friends, so their well-being is really high, and so that's where they might sit on the continuum. But then you might have someone who doesn't have a lived experience of a mental health difficulty, but actually they're having a really hard time at university. Maybe they're feeling homesick, or they're struggling to fit in, or the workload is just really, really high, in which case they've got minimal mental well-being, and so they would probably sit around there on this continuum model. And as university students, it's normal to move back and forth on this continuum. So you might feel like one week you are thriving, you are getting good grades, you're hanging out with friends, you're balancing everything really well. But then perhaps during finals or a stressful week, you might shift towards the struggling with feeling homesickness or more minimal well-being side. Being aware of the fact that your mental health and well-being can fluctuate, I have found personally to be really helpful, because once I figure out where I am at on the continuum, I'm just more self-aware, and so I can do things to address where I am really struggling in a particular area. And I really don't want this to sound, simplistic or tokenistic, but I think what I have found is actually with students, when they become more aware of that distress, or that sense of overwhelm, and where they're in an environment that they do feel supported, that's when it's so important to reach out for help. So whether that is to your personal tutor, whether that's to wellbeing services, or whether it's the fact that you've maybe developed some coping strategies to cope when things get really stressful, and so you can start enacting some of those strategies to help you manage your wellbeing a little bit better. I appreciate there are so many factors that can impact on your mental health and wellbeing at university, but as soon as we are aware of where we're at, that's when I just think it's easier for us to take action and reach out and get the help that we need to support us. I also want to add that there are brilliant times to be had at university, and that's why I really like that roller coaster analogy, because sometimes things will be going really well and you'll be smashing things, but other times things will get a little bit harder. And this is the point that I'm talking about, when things are a little bit harder, to recognize it and then reach out for that support. Mental health and well-being is definitely a journey, but I do think it's something that we need to be prioritizing. I'll leave some mental health resources in the description below, and I really don't want this to sound cheesy, but do take care of yourself. Remember, this is a continuum and there will be ups and downs, but those ups and downs are something that we all experience, so we are all moving on that continuum together. So yeah, take care.